What if the weeds growing along the edges of a neglected field right now were the exact same plants that kept ancient prophets, shepherds, and Roman soldiers moving without pain through grueling winters and rocky deserts? Most people walking down the modern pharmacy aisle reach for synthetic pain relievers without a second thought, assuming that aging naturally means accepting a life of stiff, aching joints. But thousands of years before anyone had ever heard the words anti-inflammatory, prostaglandin, or cartilage degradation, the people of the ancient biblical world were harvesting specific wild plants that modern clinical research is now confirming can lower systemic inflammation, block pain enzymes, lubricate dry joints, and protect connective tissue at a cellular level. These weren't decorative garden flowers or random folklore. They were powerful medicine hiding in plain sight on rocky hillsides from Galilee to the Mount of Olives. And today, I am going to walk you through 12 forgotten plants that will change the way you think about joint pain forever. Stick around, because number 7 was so legendary in the ancient world that it was literally mentioned alongside gold and frankincense as a royal gift, and modern medical researchers now believe it may block the exact same inflammatory pathways as prescription arthritis drugs without tearing up your stomach lining. And number 12 is a humble shepherd's herb that survived the harshest droughts in the Holy Land, containing compounds so effective at restoring mobility that clinical trials are calling it a natural miracle. If you want ancient biblical wisdom backed by modern scientific research delivered straight to you every week, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now because you do not want to miss what is coming. All right, let's get into it. Here are 12 forgotten plants that will soothe your joint pain instantly, ranked from extraordinary to absolutely life-changing. 1. Hyssop, the sacred cleanser of stiff and aching bones. When King David cried out in his deepest moment of physical and spiritual anguish, he didn't ask for an ordinary remedy. Scripture records his famous plea, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow." Psalm 51:7. For centuries, readers have seen this purely as a poetic metaphor for spiritual cleansing. But to an ancient Israelite, hyssop was a physical, tangible, purifying force. It grew wild out of the dry stone walls of Jerusalem, thriving in harsh, unforgiving environments. In ancient Levitical law, hyssop branches were used in ceremonial cleansings and applied directly to those recovering from severe skin diseases and bodily weakness. Once you examine the complex biochemistry of this ancient herb, King David's deep reverence for it makes complete clinical sense. Hyssop contains a powerhouse array of volatile essential oils, flavonoids, and rosmarinic acid, a documented polyphenol that actively suppresses pro-inflammatory cytokines in the human body. Modern clinical studies demonstrate that the bioactive compounds in hyssop actively inhibit the production of nitric oxide and lipoxygenase, which are two of the primary chemical drivers behind swelling, cartilage destruction, and deep joint throbbing. When your knees feel like they are grinding together on a cold morning, or when your knuckles swell up so badly that you can barely turn a doorknob, what you are actually feeling is a localized biochemical fire. The traditional ancient use of hyssop was specifically designed to put that fire out. Ancient healers crushed the fresh leaves and flowering tops, steeping them into a concentrated, warming tea taken daily to drive out dampness and internal stiffness. Externally, hyssop was infused into rich olive oil and massaged directly into swollen knees, aching hips, and stiff lower backs. The naturally occurring camphor-like compounds in the plant provided an immediate cooling, numbing relief to the nerve endings, while the deep penetrating antioxidants worked to soothe the inflamed synovial membranes surrounding the joint. The Israelites understood instinctively that a plant capable of pushing its roots through solid rock to survive had developed an extraordinary resilience, a biochemical resilience that had transferred directly into the bones and joints of anyone wise enough to consume it. 2. Frankincense, the golden resin of joint repair. If there is one plant product that universally defined value, healing, and reverence in the biblical world, it was frankincense. Most people today associate frankincense exclusively with the Christmas story, a precious gift brought by the wise men to the infant Jesus, Matthew 2:11. But to the ancient healers of the Middle East, this fragrant resin tapped from the boswellia tree was far more than a symbolic offering. It was a potent, frontline defense against debilitating chronic pain. The boswellia trees grew in the harsh, dry climates of the Arabian Peninsula, producing a thick, milky sap designed to heal the tree's own wounds when its bark was slashed. Ancient physicians observed this remarkable defense mechanism and brilliantly applied it to human biology. They harvested the dried tears of resin, crushing them into pastes and brewing them into powerful anti-inflammatory tonics. Modern clinical research has finally caught up to this ancient wisdom, and the results are staggering. Scientists have identified specific compounds in frankincense called boswellic acids, particularly one known as AKBA. These compounds are incredibly unique because they actively bind to and inhibit the 5-LOX enzyme, a major chemical culprit responsible for producing leukotrienes, which are molecules that trigger intense inflammation, joint swelling, and the agonizing destruction of cartilage. In clinical trials involving patients with osteoarthritis, extracts of Boswellia serrata consistently demonstrated a significant reduction in knee pain, increased joint flexion, and improved walking distance, often within just a few weeks of use. Unlike synthetic anti-inflammatories that can ruthlessly erode the stomach lining over time, frankincense protects the digestive tract while simultaneously calming the joints. It was the ancient world's ultimate dual-action medicine. The wise men didn't just bring a perfume, they brought a biochemical masterpiece, a natural remedy so effective at halting the systemic fire of inflammation that it was literally worth its weight in gold. 3. Mustard seed, the tiny giant of circulation and warmth. When Jesus needed a metaphor for faith that could move mountains, he chose the mustard seed, Matthew 17:20. While he was highlighting its remarkable growth from a tiny speck into a massive sheltering plant, the ancient Mediterranean world already held the mustard plant in high esteem for its aggressive, fast-acting medicinal properties. It wasn't just a condiment, it was a frontline treatment for deep, aching pain. Black and brown mustard seeds are packed with potent sulfur-containing compounds called glucosinolates. When these seeds are crushed and mixed with water, an enzyme reaction produces allyl isothiocyanate, the exact compound that gives mustard its sharp, pungent bite. But that bite isn't just for flavor. It's a biochemical trigger. In traditional biblical medicine, healers didn't just tell patients to eat mustard, they applied it directly to the source of the agony. They created mustard plasters, crushing the seeds, mixing them with a little flour and water, and applying the warm paste over stiff, frozen knees, aching lower backs and shoulders locked in pain. The volatile compounds in the mustard seed create a profound, localized heating effect. They rapidly dilate blood vessels, vasodilation, forcing a rush of fresh, oxygen-rich blood into the starved, inflamed joint capsule. This sudden surge of circulation flushes out stagnant inflammatory byproducts and cellular waste that contribute to chronic stiffness. It's like opening a dam to clear out a blocked, stagnant river. Modern sports medicine still utilizes this exact principle of localized heat and vasodilation to speed up tissue recovery, proving that the ancient physicians were utilizing advanced circulatory therapies centuries before the discovery of the cardiovascular system. The mustard seed may have been the smallest of seeds, but its ability to drive heat, blood, and healing into a painful joint made it a giant in the ancient apothecary. 4. Nettle, the fiery weed that conquers stiffness. If you've ever brushed against a wild nettle plant, you know exactly why it earned its stinging reputation. The leaves and stems are covered in tiny, hollow hairs that inject histamine and other irritating chemicals into the skin upon contact. For most modern people, nettle is just a painful nuisance to be pulled from the garden and thrown away. But ancient healers understood a profound biological paradox. Sometimes, the very thing that causes a temporary sting holds the key to curing deep, chronic agony. Stinging nettle has been used across the biblical world and the broader Mediterranean for thousands of years, specifically to treat what ancient physicians called locked joints. The traditional application method, known as urtication, involved deliberately whipping the fresh, stinging leaves against swollen, arthritic knees and knuckles. While that sounds terrifying today, it was actually a highly sophisticated method of pain relief. When the nettle stingers inject their microdoses of histamines into the tissue, the body responds by sending an aggressive rush of fresh blood, anti-inflammatory compounds, and specialized immune cells to the area. This counter-irritation technique effectively overrides the deeper, chronic joint pain signals being sent to the brain. While the fresh blood flow helps flush out the stagnant inflammatory proteins that cause morning stiffness. But the healing didn't stop with the sting. When the leaves are dried or boiled, the stinging chemicals are neutralized, revealing a deep green herb that is exceptionally rich in calcium, magnesium, and boron, the exact minerals required to rebuild deteriorating bone and support healthy cartilage. A strong infusion of nettle tea acts as a powerful, natural diuretic, helping the kidneys flush out excess uric acid from the bloodstream. This was crucial, as ancient diets heavy in certain meats or wines could lead to painful uric acid crystal deposits in the joints, a condition we know today as gout. Whether applied externally to jumpstart blood flow or consumed internally to clear out acidic waste, nettle was a resilient, wild-growing ally that proved the ancient world knew how to harness the earth's fiercest plants for the body's deepest healing. 5. Coriander, the cooling seed of mobility. When the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, struggling to understand the miraculous provision of manna that fell from the sky, Scripture describes it by comparing it to something they already knew intimately. It was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Exodus 16:31. The fact that coriander was the universal reference point tells us exactly how common and essential this plant was in their daily lives. But coriander wasn't just a flavor they remembered from Egypt, it was a deeply trusted medicinal staple. Both the leaves, which we call cilantro, and the small, round seeds possess an extraordinary cooling, soothing energy that ancient physicians relied on to treat internal heat and systemic swelling. Modern biochemical analysis has revealed that coriander seeds are densely packed with powerful antioxidant flavonoids, including quercetin and terpenine. These specific compounds have been heavily studied for their ability to suppress cellular inflammation and reduce oxidative stress within the joint capsule. Furthermore, coriander seed oil contains linalool, a natural analgesic that helps interrupt the pain, signaling pathways in the nervous system. In the ancient world, chronic joint pain was often viewed as a condition of excess heat and dampness trapped within the body. The traditional preparation involved crushing the dried coriander seeds and steeping them overnight in water, creating a cool, mildly fragrant tonic that was drunk first thing in the morning. This simple daily ritual worked as a gentle, natural anti-inflammatory, helping to cool the fiery, swollen joints from the inside out while simultaneously supporting the liver and kidneys in their daily detoxification work. Externally, the crushed seeds were mixed into a poultice with a little olive oil and applied to inflamed knuckles and knees to draw out the heat. God chose the humble coriander seed to describe his daily, life-sustaining miracle in the desert, and considering how effectively this small seed sustains joint mobility and quenches the fire of inflammation, that comparison carries a physical weight just as profound as its spiritual one. 6. The olive tree, the biological lubricant of the ancients. When biblical prophets spoke of health, prosperity, and God's favor, they almost always mentioned the olive tree. We tend to view olive oil purely as a cooking ingredient today, a healthy fat to drizzle over a salad. But in the ancient Mediterranean, olive oil and the bitter leaves of the olive tree were the primary medicines used to treat creaking bones and paralyzed limbs. As you age, the synovial fluid that naturally cushions your joints begins to dry up, leaving cartilage to grind painfully against bone like rusted metal gears. The ancients didn't have joint replacement surgeries. They relied on the olive tree to restore that lost lubrication from the inside out. Modern science has recently uncovered exactly why this worked. Extra virgin olive oil and the leaves of the tree itself contain a remarkable phenolic compound called oleocanthal. Researchers have discovered that oleocanthal works along the exact same biochemical pathways as modern non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, specifically by inhibiting the COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes that cause severe joint swelling and morning stiffness. The traditional method involved drinking a spoonful of the highest quality, first-pressed oil daily and rubbing it vigorously into stiff shoulders and aching hands until the skin was warm. It was an internal and external remedy that provided a protective, anti-inflammatory coating to the body's most vulnerable hinges, allowing older shepherds and travelers to walk miles over rocky terrain without their knees giving out. 7. Myrrh, the royal resin that halts the fire of arthritis. Here we are at number 7, the legendary plant I promised you at the very beginning. When the wise men presented gold, frankincense, and myrrh to the newborn Jesus, Matthew 2:11, they weren't just giving him expensive perfumes, they were offering the ancient world's most powerful medical treasury. Myrrh, a resin extracted from the thorny Commiphora tree, was specifically prized for its ability to treat agonizing, deep tissue pain. In fact, it was so deeply respected as a painkiller that it was offered to Jesus on the cross mixed with wine to numb his suffering, Mark 15:23. If you have ever experienced the kind of deep, throbbing joint pain that keeps you awake at 2 a.m., feeling like a hot knife is lodged in your knee or hip, you understand exactly what kind of agony the ancients were trying to stop. Today, clinical researchers are intensely studying myrrh and have isolated active compounds called furanodienase. These remarkable molecules have been shown in laboratory studies to possess powerful analgesic, pain-relieving, and anti-inflammatory properties, directly suppressing the production of prostaglandins, the chemical messengers that tell your brain you are in pain. While modern arthritis medications can ruthlessly strip away your stomach lining over time, causing ulcers and digestive bleeding, myrrh has been historically shown to protect the gastric mucosa while simultaneously shutting down the inflammatory pathways in the joints. Traditional ancient physicians would steep crushed myrrh resin in wine or oil, creating a highly concentrated extract that was taken in small, careful doses to break the cycle of chronic pain. It was a royal remedy for the most relentless suffering, and modern science is finally confirming that it earned its rightful place beside gold. 8. Cassia, the warming bark of mobility. When God gave Moses the exact recipe for the sacred anointing oil in Exodus 30, one of the primary ingredients commanded by name was cassia, an ancient and potent relative of modern cinnamon. Today, most people only think of cinnamon as a sweet baking spice, completely unaware that it was once fiercely guarded by ancient apothecaries as a premier treatment for stiff, frozen joints. If you wake up in the morning feeling like your knees and lower back are locked in concrete, requiring 10 minutes just to get out of bed and get moving, you are experiencing what ancient physicians called cold stagnation. Cassia was the ultimate biological remedy for this exact problem. Modern biochemical analysis reveals that cassia bark is loaded with cinnamaldehyde, a highly active compound that has been shown in clinical trials to aggressively suppress the release of arachidonic acid, a primary inflammatory fatty acid that triggers deep joint swelling and cartilage erosion. Traditional healers didn't just use it for its fragrance, they ground the thick woody bark and steeped it into potent warming broths, or infused it into olive oil to vigorously massage into stiff limbs. The volatile oils in cassia create a deep, penetrating heat that rapidly expands local blood vessels, literally melting away the rust in your biological hinges and flushing fresh, oxygenated blood into the starved cartilage. It was a sacred oil for the tabernacle, but it was also a daily functional miracle for the aging shepherd who needed to keep walking without pain. 9. Aloes, the biological extinguisher for burning joints. When Nicodemus came to prepare the body of Jesus, he brought a massive mixture of myrrh and aloes, John 19:39, a pairing that highlights just how revered this desert succulent was in the biblical world. While cassia was used to warm up cold, stiff joints, aloes were the frontline defense for the exact opposite problem, joints that were red, hot, and visibly swollen. If your knuckles, ankles, or knees ever feel like they are practically radiating heat, burning with a systemic fire that makes even the lightest touch agonizing, you are dealing with aggressive, acute inflammation. The ancient world didn't have ice packs or synthetic steroid injections to force the swelling down. They relied on the thick, translucent gel of the aloe plant. Modern science has since discovered that aloe contains a highly unique enzyme called bradykinase, which acts specifically to break down bradykinin, one of the key chemical messengers that directly cause localized pain and severe swelling. Furthermore, aloe provides a rich source of asamannan, a complex carbohydrate that acts as a natural mucilage, actively lubricating the dry, irritated, and inflamed spaces between your bones. Traditional biblical physicians would instruct patients to ingest the inner gel to cool the digestive tract and calm systemic inflammation from the inside, while simultaneously laying the freshly split leaves directly over burning arthritic joints to pull the heat out. It is an incredible testament to ancient wisdom that the very plant capable of surviving the blistering, waterless heat of the desert is exactly the one equipped to extinguish the biological fire burning inside your own joints. 10. Black cumin, the microscopic seed of immune harmony. In the book of Isaiah, the prophet describes the careful, specific way that black cumin, often translated as fitches, must be harvested, beaten out gently with a staff rather than crushed carelessly under a heavy cartwheel, Isaiah 28:27. This ancient reverence for the delicate black seed, also known as Nigella sativa, was no accident. If your joint pain feels different, if it isn't just the dull mechanical ache of daily wear and tear, but rather a fierce, symmetrical throbbing in your hands and feet that makes it feel like your own body is actively attacking you, you are likely dealing with autoimmune-driven inflammation, similar to modern rheumatoid arthritis. The ancient physicians didn't have a word for autoimmune disease, but they knew instinctively that cold-pressed black cumin seed oil could bring a rebellious body back into balance. Today, modern biochemistry reveals that this tiny seed contains thymoquinone, a master antioxidant and immune modulator. Clinical studies show that thymoquinone doesn't just numb the surface pain, it acts as a biological diplomat, actively regulating the inflammatory cytokines and T cells that mistakenly attack healthy joint tissue. By gently pressing the oil and consuming it daily, the people of the ancient Middle East were quietly reprogramming their immune systems. effectively stopping the friendly fire that was destroying their precious cartilage from the inside out. 11. Rue, the bitter leaf of nerve and joint restoration. In Luke 11:42, Jesus specifically mentions the herb rue, criticizing the religious leaders for meticulously tithing this bitter garden plant while completely neglecting justice and the love of God. The fact that it was tithed down to the absolute last leaf tells you exactly how highly it was valued in the first-century medicine cabinet. Here is a reality that anyone with severe arthritis knows. As joint cartilage wears away, the bones compress, often pinching and irritating the surrounding nerves. This creates a sharp, shooting electrical pain that radiates down your legs or shoots through your arms, a secondary, terrifying agony added to the joint pain itself. Rue was the ancient world's premier botanical remedy for this exact type of nerve-driven suffering. Modern analysis has found that rue is exceptionally rich in rutin, a powerful flavonoid that specifically strengthens the walls of capillaries and small blood vessels. By fortifying these microscopic delivery highways, rutin ensures that oxygen, anti-inflammatory compounds, and healing nutrients can actually reach the starved, compressed tissues and irritated nerves surrounding the degrading joint. Traditional biblical healers would steep the bitter leaves in hot water for a medicinal tea or create a potent poultice to lay directly over the lower spine and hips, helping to quiet the misfiring nerves that felt like frayed electrical wires inside the body. It was just a humble, bitter weed in the garden, but for an aging shepherd paralyzed by shooting pain, it was an absolute godsend. 12. Milk thistle, the ultimate shepherd's remedy for joint regeneration. And here we are at number 12, the humble plant I promised you from the very beginning. If you were an aging shepherd in the rocky hills of Galilee, walking 10 miles a day on uneven ground, you didn't have the luxury of resting a bad knee. You needed a miracle to keep moving. Milk thistle is a thorny, purple-flowered weed that grows wild across the Middle East. For centuries, it was considered a potent folk remedy, primarily known for protecting the liver, but ancient healers also noticed something extraordinary. When older laborers consumed the crushed seeds of the milk thistle, their stiff, swollen, and failing joints began to move freely again. Modern science has finally uncovered the biochemical genius behind this ancient observation. Milk thistle seeds contain a highly concentrated antioxidant complex called silymarin. Recent clinical studies have revealed that silymarin is not just a liver detoxifier, it is a profound chondroprotective agent, meaning it actively protects and preserves the physical structure of your cartilage. In laboratory settings, silymarin has been shown to aggressively inhibit the production of pro-inflammatory enzymes and block the degradation of collagen within the joint space. But here is the truly miraculous part. By simultaneously supercharging the liver's ability to filter out toxins, milk thistle drops the overall burden of systemic inflammation in the blood, effectively shutting off the alarm bells that tell your joints to swell up in the first place. It attacks joint pain from two completely different angles. Traditional use involved grinding the hard seeds and simmering them into a bitter, earthy tea, taken daily as a lifelong preventative. It was a resilient weed that taught the ancient world how to rebuild a broken body, proving that the most powerful medicines on earth often disguise themselves as the humblest plants. 12 plants, 12 biochemical miracles, and thousands of years of accumulated wisdom that practically got paved over by the modern pharmacy aisle. But knowing which plants to use is only the first half of the battle. The ancient people of the biblical world didn't just eat these herbs randomly. They integrated them into a specific daily routine that maximized their healing power. Modern science calls this bioavailability, but the ancients just called it common sense. Here is what you need to know to take these forgotten plants and actually make them work for your joints today. Finally, the most profound ancient secret to healing your joints isn't a plant or a physical practice at all. It's a complete shift in how you view the healing process itself. Modern medicine has trained us to expect instantaneous numbness. We swallow a synthetic pill and demand that the deep, grinding ache disappears in 20 minutes. But masking the pain is not the same thing as actually healing the tissue. The ancient biblical healers understood that restoring a degraded, bone-on-bone joint takes time, patience, and a profound respect for the body's natural regenerative rhythms. When you begin incorporating these 12 sacred plants, whether it's steeping stinging nettle tea in the morning, massaging frankincense oil into your knees at night, or adding crushed coriander to your meals, you are not looking for a 20-minute magic trick. You are systematically rebuilding your biological foundation. You are lowering systemic inflammation, flushing out acidic waste, and giving your cartilage the exact biochemical tools it desperately needs to regenerate. It took decades of hard work, daily stress, and highly processed inflammatory diets to wear your joints down. You must give God's pharmacy the time, faith, and consistency it needs to build them back up. You do not have to accept chronic pain, stiffness, and the loss of your independence as a permanent, inevitable part of growing older. Your body was exquisitely designed by its creator with a miraculous capacity to heal itself, provided you stop fighting it and start feeding it the ancient, medicinal wisdom it is starving for. These 12 forgotten plants survived famines, droughts, and falling empires, and they are still growing abundantly today, waiting to offer their wild resilience directly to your bones. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these ancient biblical plants surprised you the most today? Are you going to try the golden frankincense oil for your knees, or start brewing the shepherd's milk thistle tea to clear out the inflammation? Drop a comment down below and share your story with us. I read every single one, and your personal journey might be exactly what someone else in our community needs to read today to finally find hope. If this video opened your eyes to the true power of biblical health, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into ancient wisdom and modern clinical science. Share this video with a friend or a family member who is tired of living in pain and relies on you for guidance. Until next time, remember that true, lasting healing is already growing right outside your door. Stay blessed, stay healthy, and keep moving.